Aha.
It's all good, yeah. So you're in a separate video from me. This is a separate thing that we're doing. We can hear both voices, but
Okay.
I'm in a separate video, and then it's sort of replicated.
Now, do you have any way of knowing if, hold on. Sorry. Do you have any way of knowing, Jennifer, if the video actually recorded on the last little segment we did, or do you think maybe it
Yeah,
didn't?
yeah. It did record. It recorded with
Oh,
you. I've done it in a special way, but it has recorded. Yes.
okay, great. Anyway, so do you have any preliminary things to say before we jump into the definition?
Just to caution you that we really do need to stick tightly to the time frame because I do need to finish in about 15 minutes.
No problem. I can do that. I can.
Okay, so if we begin right away, and I just want some very sort of layman's approach to shamanism,
Yeah.
not getting into too many details.
No, not too many details. Okay, so basically, my definition of shamanism is in stages. Okay, I think that to have any kind of shamanic experience, I think the first thing people have to do is they have to find some way of stepping outside of what we might call the conventional way of thinking. Okay, and I haven't even defined what conventional thinking is, and so that right there is a problem. To me, what I would call conventional thinking is kind of an ordinary sense of reality, a sense of reality that maybe is not very metaphorical, a sense of reality that's what you might call received. You know the word received, how they say received pronunciation. You know, you'll have an accent the way you're supposed to sound and do things, and well, let's call it received wisdom. You know, it would be seeing outside of received wisdom or seeing outside of the conventional. How people get there to step outside of the conventional, I believe that's something that I don't think I have any business telling people, because different people will get there in different ways. And I don't want to fall into the cliche about how it's going to be painful or how it's going to be disturbing, because I think that once we do get outside, when we start developing the later stages, the the later stages of shamanism, I think that people find that it's not so horrible after all. And so I don't want to advertise a kind of some kind of drastic or you know, what do you call it? I don't want to advertise it as some kind of traumatic experience when in the end it might really be a kind of a therapeutic experience. But I'm also not going to say that it would necessarily be pleasant, and I don't want to. I just want to leave it open to each person, you know, without. I don't want to foreshadow other people's experience too much.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, that's more just a question of politeness, maybe, and also I'm just really reluctant to try to take cliches off the rack of what shamanism. I feel like it's kind of a Carlos Castaneda cliche of the you know, traumatic entry or whatever. I just try to avoid that. But to be honest, I'll tell people that in my life, I don't think I'm a shaman, number one, but in my life, I have had pretty traumatic or, you know, painful experiences, some of them very severe. But I don't want to tell anybody that they have to have severe experiences, because I think it feels a little impolite to me. And I'll let other people report from their transition how they felt, you know, as opposed to telling them. But I would say that the first step towards even approaching the experience of shamanism would be some kind of a departure from what we might call a conventional reality, all right, or the conventional mode of being in reality. Okay, and certainly if you read anything like Lewis Carroll, or if you're familiar with any kind of abstract novel writing, I think we can appreciate that, you know, like maybe as far as movies, maybe like The Wizard of Oz or like the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, we all have a sense, or maybe, I don't want to say Harry Potter, but we all have a sense that there's a kind of a more imaginary dimension, you know, to living. And the question is whether we can be in reality, but at the same time, sort of tapping into that sort of more fantastical mode of experience. And I think that's, to me, part or maybe an example of getting outside. Okay. How we do that, I leave it open. But then, to me, being a shaman requires additional steps. It requires getting comfortable in that mode, and then being able to generalize what conventional is really is, because we all start with what we might call a home convention, which is the conventions of our home culture, our home family, maybe our territory where we're from. And so, if we are ever able, if we're lucky enough to escape that, we can start to get a kind of a familiarity from the outside of what our conventional world is. But we're really looking only at our home convention where we come from. I think to become a shaman, in my opinion, I think you have to get a little more general than that and look at other localities in the world to see generally maybe what orthodoxy really is in general, not just one particular example of orthodoxy. So I think you do have to kind of get familiar with orthodoxy as a generality, and maybe have some experience in the world. And then I think you have to learn to eventually interact with orthodoxy in a way that's not too how would you say, that doesn't collapse into naive disagreements or breakdowns with people. I think there is a kind of a diplomacy that has to be developed. The art of learning how maybe even to act, and maybe even how to simulate orthodox behavior, but now from the outside, now that we're not inside it. So I do think that we have to get comfortable on the outside, but also interfacing with orthodoxy on the inside. And I guess an example of that would be to find a way to step outside of conventionality, maybe in your home culture, and then still develop the art of knowing how to, let's say, talk to people, knowing how to give people gestures that make them feel comfortable, knowing how to handle conflict. Very similar to what someone learns in martial arts. Okay. Martial arts is not training people how to be angry bullies, but it's teaching people how to see maybe a more wise perspective, but if they have to deal with a bully, that they would have some ability to do it. And so I look at it as a little bit like martial arts. And I guess finally, I look at shamanism as a kind of musicianship. It's sort of like being a musician of moods, because I think moods are the essential ingredients of our conscience and our awareness and our interactive, how would you say, our interactive experience with the world and with other people. And so I think humans are very mood oriented, but I think moods are mental states that are not necessarily like being in a bad mood or a good mood, but I think moods are really the basic tones of how we communicate with people. And so I think that a shaman has to learn to master all the moods, just as though the moods were notes on a piano keyboard, and you were learning how to be a musician. Okay, and I really think that that's part of how we communicate, and I think it's also part of how we expand our own personal sense of the world to get a more holistic conscience. And so I do think that we have to become musicians of the mind, of the moods. And I think that takes about as long time as it takes to become a musician in the real world. It takes a lot of practice, and we start off kind of awkward. But I think with patience, I think we can learn to develop some very, very interesting, I want to say songs, but I just mean the ability to be lyrical in the moods of our mind. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But interactively lyrical, and I think that people do appreciate that. I want to share with people a little idea of how, one of the ways that I think of doing that, and I think it's really important, I think, at least in my case, to think about dogs. Because I think dogs have some very special mood states that humans immediately perceive as happiness or readiness. I actually, when I think of a dog wagging his tail, I don't necessarily think of happiness. I think of what we might call readiness. It's a kind of enthusiastic readiness. And I think if we're open-minded, we can learn to appreciate that mood as not necessarily being a frivolous mood. doesn't have to be a frivolous mood. It can just be a state of mind, a mood state that we're ready to use, just like an expert in martial arts is ready to use different attitudes of the mind to be present. Okay?
Sure.
So for me, the dog tail wagging, it sounds crazy, but I think that the mood of the dog wagging his tail, if we learn to master it in a mature way, I think that can become a very special aspect of making music with our mood, and being able to use it and to have it be a kind of a communication. And not just communication, but a way of expanding our own personal experience and our breadth of thought and awareness in the world. And so I think it just makes people more deeper, makes us deeper, broader, more aware, and probably way beyond getting caught up in little aggravated conflicts with people. And I think when we become that broad-minded, we're just too far beyond the surface of being caught up in whether somebody's right or wrong, or whether we're winning an argument, or whether we're offended by something that someone told us. And I think we're just much less likely to get into what we might think of as petty conflicts. Now we'll still feel petty conflict, and we'll still be reactive to when that approaches, but we'll probably handle it differently. So I think that's something that's part of what I might think of as becoming more mature. And I do think of shamanism as being a kind of maturity, but also a kind of fluency with the world of the conventional.
You have about 4 minutes left.
Okay, no problem. And so basically, for me, the most important thing about shamanism is to be kind of like a voluntary manic depressive. Okay, except a voluntary manic depressive who actually can alter the states of mania and depression, and not be controlled by mania and depression, but actually control the mania and the depression. Okay, because these are sequences, these are basic sequences of mood that can get us into different places and to get us into the very foundation of the lyrical art of mood music, if you want to call it that. And that is a kind of a communication, but it's also a way of opening our own awareness internally. Okay, so it is kind of like being an actor, if you think about it. An actor has to learn to summon different moods on command and to learn to deliver them interactively and also inside themselves. So to me, it's very similar to acting. And then finally, what I want to say is that one of the ways that I do my basic shamanic, or the way I think of my basic shamanic practice is first of all to learn to use the depression, because that's a way of shutting down my attachment to the conventional. And so for me, the conventional, I think of it as a kind of a concern of satisfactions. Okay, and so I think of all the area of my thinking that's concerned with satisfaction or not satisfaction or anything related to satisfaction. And if I can neutralize that whole panorama of thinking and sort of enter into a sort of blankness, a kind of an emptiness with regard to satisfaction. And then I think of the dog wagging his tail, that kind of happiness. If I can be in the void where it's total desolation with respect to anything that could be satisfactory, in that desolation, if I can activate the dog readiness and the dog happy face and the dog tail wagging, I think I'm able to enter a kind of a enthusiasm that's not frivolous, but I'm now ready to play, and I'm ready to play music. You see what I mean? But I'm no longer attached to the world of satisfaction. And I think that's an interesting starting place. But it's just a starting place, because then what we're dealing with is making music. And I think making music is a kind of a play. And I don't think, I like Aldous Huxley for saying we keep our enthusiasm to adulthood, but I really think this is more of an acute sense of play, and it's not a frivolous sense of play. Okay, I hope that's been reasonably clear, but that's pretty much my concept of shamanism. It's a kind of a musicianship of your own soul, if you want to call it that, your heart, your mind, to make as much music with the moods as you can, but not have it be a vehicle for satisfaction. We're beyond satisfaction. And then finally, I just want to say that when a person can live beyond the realm of satisfaction, in my opinion, that's not just being a shaman. In my opinion, that's being an adult. Okay, and I think adulthood is a very important concept in the notion of shamanism. Finally, I just want to say, we may be slightly over time, but I just want to say that to me, a person is not shamanic until their musicianship of the self is at the same time a teaching. It's not shaman for a person to hold himself out as a teacher, but it is shaman for a person's way of living, way of conducting his life and carrying himself, his demeanor itself to be a teaching for others that they can actually see how to do it themselves. And that's a very magical, special way of being. And that's what I would consider finally a shaman.
Thank you very much, John. That was very good to hear. Very, I could say very excellent, but that's not grammatically correct. But thank you. And I'm going to have to wrap it up quite soon, in about a minute.
Okay. But I want to say, Jennifer, thanks for making arrangements that we could do this morning. I really appreciate it, seriously.
Okay, well, I hope it's come
And,
out well, and thank you very
and
much.
I also want to say thank you for the rigorous conversation we've had in the last week, which led up to this.
Okay, and thank you likewise, and I hope you have a relaxing day today.
Okay, we'll take
Okay,
care.
bye.